What's up? Another episode. Summer is nearing its end. It's good to be back. I was on vacation, and then also had kids into summer sports stuff going on. So busy last month, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, it is good to be back. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, getting ready for school. I'm sure your kids are already in school. So
They are already in school. The further north you go, the later you go to school, I think.
yeah,
So congrats to your kids.
yeah. I have one starting next week, and then the rest start after Labor Day. So I'm ready for them to go back. I'll be honest. I'm ready to get back in those routines.
Tis the season to get the kids out of the house, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so a lot's been happening. There's a lot we could talk about. But kind of one of our themes here is to talk about jacked theology, what we see as jacked. Uh, and and it keeps coming up just because it's probably going to keep coming up the next 4 years is Christian nationalism and all that. And I saw that state senator from Texas. He preached at a UCC church actually, and I'm at a UCC church, and so that was going around, and he made a great point that Jesus' prayer, the Lord's prayer, and part of it is "Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," is a very political statement, right? It's not partisan, but it's very political. And so, what does His kingdom come mean on earth as it is in heaven? And I think that's the discussion we have around Christian nationalism. And it seems to us clearly that he, um, our cultural's version of Christian nationalism that is talked about a lot has nothing to do with God's kingdom. It is something other than Christ. And I use antichrist a lot online when I talk about it. This is antichrist because it's a very selfish Christianity. It's a very power hungry Christianity. It's a very self-serving. Um, it's not in any way look like Jesus. Jesus is kind of the mascot, if you will, for them. And sometimes not even the mascot. Maybe the Bible or their version of the Bible is the mascot. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you've pointed out like this unhealthy relationship, right, between theology, the kingdom of God, and politics. I don't know how you were raised, but I was raised with this idea that we shouldn't. They would say we shouldn't be involved in politics, but yet they would support the moral majority. They would always vote, Republican for certain reasons. It was, abortion was the main thing, and so it was like we were speaking out of one side of our mouth and saying one thing, and then out of the other side of our mouth and doing another one. But for a long time, even in pastoral ministry, it was like there should be this huge chasm between politics and theology, and I don't believe that anymore now. But Christian nationalism has kind of made me step back, right, and say, what is the healthy and right relationship between the church, between the kingdom of God, and between politics, the kingdom of man? Like you said, Jesus made political statements. A lot of what he did and taught was political. But then how do we do that in a way that's healthy and Christ-centered rather than the bad side of it that we're seeing right now, at least from my vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us would agree with Jesus' statement to go and make disciples. And so what is the natural, logical end game of that, right, is to see everybody become a disciple of Jesus. And I think Doug Wilson said that on his CNN interview is, we're called to make disciples and we want to see everyone come to Christ. And I would, I guess, agree with that sentiment. I want everyone to experience Christ's love and come into relationship with Christ and all of that. But how we get there, what that looks like, I think is where we quickly diverge. I think,
Haven't we done this though? Right? I mean,
yeah.
don't we have lots of history of doing this, like
Yes,
crusades,
yes.
et cetera, et cetera? Like, don't we have lots of experience in what it looks like in order to force Christianity onto people rather than draw people to Christ, force them into, this morality? Has this ever worked?
No, yeah. Well, and Doug Wilson citing, Saudi Arabia and Sharia law as examples of what it would look like, and
As positive
uh,
examples?
yeah, I'm not
No,
even sure
seriously.
you.
What?
Yeah, he
Oh
was.
my gosh.
Yeah, in that CNN interview, he was saying, well, the Muslims do it. Why can't we do it?
Yeah,
And
which is like where we are, right? I mean, I have totally tried to resist publicly comparing Christian nationalism and Christians to Islam or Sharia law, mostly because I don't want to demean.
yeah,
I don't want to besmirch good Muslims.
yeah,
I don't want to, I don't want to make it look like, Sharia law is worse than what's going on in Christian nationalism. It's not. So, I feel like it's like, no, it's not being nice, to Islam in order to say that, because we're in a far worse situation, in my opinion. But that's what it is, right? I mean, Christian nationalism is essentially the Christian version of Sharia law, and
yeah,
they're owning it. And
yeah.
people are being drawn to that, which is mind blowing.
It is. It's mind blowing. It compromises the gospel. Everybody wants to preach the gospel, and it definitely is compromising that. Um, to force someone to do something they don't want to do isn't loving. It's I would say the good Muslims I know would speak out against some Sharia law. They would speak out against that type of Muslim nationalism, if you will. And I think, and that's what we're doing here. It's so yeah. What it begins to do is it begins to, because rather than like the early church, it's clear they sought to just love their neighbor and love God, right? And they, I mean, the classic Acts 2 passage, they centered around the teaching. They loved each other. They lived as a community. There's some descriptors of what that community looked like, but there was never any forcing anybody. There was never any like, let's go to war, let's get violent to try to take over the world for Jesus. It was we're just going to love, right? And slowly over time, through their patience, through their faithfulness, more and more people began to enter into Christianity. And so then it got skewed, right? It became a way for people to gain power, to keep power, to build wealth. We see all that today, right? In a lot of our movements, Christian movements today. And so when the main thing is building wealth, building power, building a political system, you're going to compromise what Christianity is all about. You're going to compromise feeding the hungry and the homeless. Like we saw this past week, Donald Trump's cronies taking bulldozers to homeless camps, encampments, and tearing people's homes apart. And there is a lot of debate around what to do with homelessness and how to address it, but destroying their property and their whatever possessions they have is not it.
Treating people like less than human
Yeah, exactly.
is just frankly it. There are other ways to accomplish the same thing if that is what needs to be accomplished. But to dehumanize people, to treat people like animals, is not the Christian way. And I just continue to be appalled, not just at Christian theology, but a Christian theology which moves people towards the dehumanization of the people whom Jesus said is most incumbent upon us to rehumanize. I just I just don't know that there's anything of the spirit in you if you can watch that kind of thing and look the other way. Just what is wrong with you? There's nothing of Christ in any of this, even if it's the right thing, it's the wrong way. And Jesus, we've always been taught in Christianity, you can do the right thing, but do it in the wrong way and it becomes wrong. And so I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I think, we're serving the kingdom of man and calling it the kingdom of God, pretending that it's, the the kingdom of God. And that, I think,
Yeah.
is what I was, whenever you're talking about politics, and I'm just kind of wrestling with how do I support politics in a Christ-like way when the other folks are saying that they're supporting politics in a Christ-like way as well. And I'm like, okay, well, which one of these is building the kingdom of man, and which one is building the kingdom of God? That's really the only thing that I feel like, you can fall back on in my mind is, okay, which is this building the kingdom of Christ, the kingdom of God, or is this building the kingdom of man? And Christian nationalism is building the kingdom of man, but using a false religion, a false theology in order to do it.
Yeah, well, let's go back to our '90s bracelets. What would Jesus do? I mean,
What would Jesus do? Yeah, right.
Right. Like, would Jesus go in and break up this encampment with a bulldozer? I mean, to me, that's simple as
No.
that.
No, but
right?
There are some who would say he would, right? But then it's like, you don't know Jesus, I don't think.
Yeah, well, then there's that. So I think to the people that would actually listen to this and, maybe be supporting what Trump is doing in some of these ways, like, literally ask yourself, would Jesus do that? And don't make excuses. Well, it's not his job and blah, blah, blah. And try to separate him, because I see a lot of that, right? Like they try to separate Jesus out, compartmentalize, and I don't think you can do that as a Christian. It's not what we're called to do. We're not called to have a partisan political life over here and then our Christian life over here. So for those folks, I think on the fence, yeah. Then there's people who are so far gone,
Yeah.
The William Wolfs of the world. Like
William
I saw,
Wolfs of the world, yeah.
I haven't seen him in my feed in a while, but today actually, or last night, he was blasting the SBC for having church plants to immigrants and said that's evil. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I saw somebody comment on that and say maybe the only good thing that will come out of that is less Southern Baptist evangelization going on. Even though William is completely wrong, about why he's doing it, maybe the good thing that will come out of that is less SBC nonsense.
Yeah, maybe people start ignoring the SBC.
But people don't want Christianity anymore. Increasingly, they don't want Christianity. They want something that is very different from that, and they recognize that religion, that Christianity is the vehicle that will get them there, because that has worked by and large now for decades. Why, if the evangelical church is growing, why is it growing? Well, it's not growing through conversion. It's growing through people jumping on board of what is perceived to be the winning team. It's not people who are being moved closer to Christ. It's people who are being moved more closely to the center of power in the U.S. It's for all intents and purposes, it's now a state church. MAGA, evangelical Christianity, conservative, like all of it is essentially now a state church. Maybe not technically, but by definition, essentially, that's essentially where we are with this growing segment within Christianity.
No, it's true, because it's definitely, you can definitely tell by how people say things in different church settings, whether they're MAGA or not, right? It's definitely a distinct line. And then, if you're not MAGA and somebody is, I mean, you're evil, you're going to hell. And so, yeah, I would agree with that. I think we've lost the ability to have nuance in our theology. It's either you're in this state church or you're not American, you're not a Christian, fill in the blank. And so I think you hit it right on the head. And a lot of these preachers are just preaching, state religion and, Republican Project 2025 talking points. It's not even, necessarily sermons anymore. It's no, just talking points,
it used to be conservative theology, right? I mean, it used to be theology that was from a conservative angle, a more literal interpretation of the Bible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's been hijacked now, and it's not conservative theology. It's conservative Republican values that are masquerading as theology. And I think so many pastors and churches and congregants now as well have been sucked into this scary vortex where they removed their conservative theology brain and replaced it with a conservative political theology brain and don't see the difference, between the two things. And there's a huge difference between those two things, which is where you get to William Wolfe and Joel Webben and Nazism and racism and bulldozing homeless camps and, deporting, people without care, without harm to countries, where they've never been to or come from, and, giving them the middle finger on their way out, and saying, God bless you. It just, this is no longer conservative theology that's being taught, in our churches. It's really not even conservative politics. Let's be honest. It's some mutant, some X-Men form of conservative theology. I mean, of conservative politics, but it is what it is now. The conservative Republican Party no longer exists.
No, I think there's one left. It's not Paul Ryan. Paul. Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, the
Paul.
guy from Kentucky. Is that Rand Paul? Yeah.
Rand Paul. Yes, he's probably the only one left. And
they know it, right? I mean, what was it? A third of Republican senators or a third of Republican House folks were just somehow they're polled, but a stat, that essentially a third or more of elected Congress people on the Republican Party know that what's going on with Trump is ridiculous and a lie, but it's the only way they stay in power. It's the only way they continue to get a paycheck. It's the only way that they continue to get in office is to stay on board, shut up, and vote the party line.
Yeah. And I've been watching. What's really depressed me this last month as I've watched a lot of this stuff unfold. Even the Gaza stuff with kids dying in Gaza and us actually taking back aid from them, and the list goes on and on. The ICE continues to be violent, to separate families. Is one, I see a lot of MAGA Christians, or still in the closet, but I know they're MAGA Christians, being silent or happy about it. And that's been the most depressing thing to watch, is how this has been their vision of what on earth as it is in heaven means, because in their minds they're being biblical Christians, right?
Yeah.
And they think this is what it is. I just, that's been most depressing and heartbreaking for me.
That's a really good point, Matt, that I had not thought of.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, this creates an environment, right? This creates a kingdom that they're building, and it's a kingdom on quicksand. It's a house that's destined to fall. It's a miserable kingdom that looks nothing like the kingdom of God. No diversity of thought, of ethnicity. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. That's pretty compelling.
Yeah. I think, we didn't see it then. I mean, I didn't see it this way then. Maybe you did. Maybe others did. But when Vance was talking about the order of love, and he was talking about how that's his view is the biblical way and all this stuff. And clearly he was wrong. Even the Pope Leo, before Pope Leo called him out. But that's what they've convinced Christianity is, that we take care of ourselves first and we don't care about other people. And that's what they're doing. I mean, every decision they make is actually through that order that
me first
talked about.
Yeah,
me first. People that look like me second, and then everybody else, screw you.
Me first. I deserve this because I've been so repressed, suppressed, put down, let down. It's my turn. It's my turn to take something because so much has been taken from me. Where's Jesus in that?
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
I'm going
to
to
say,
do I'm going to do unto you as I feel like you've done to me. That's not the golden rule,
yeah. No, yeah.
It's not the way that goes.
Yeah. It is. It's crazy. It's crazy. Um, it's like if you're not helping me, you're not going to help anybody else. So, just every policy is about helping people that look like JD Vance and talk like JD Vance and act like JD Vance, right? That's kind of the
White
old,
bread. White bread
yeah,
cowards.
yeah. That's their target group, and if you're not part of that, you're on the outside and are deserving of hell, and they're going to give you hell. So,
Yeah, well, Christians are fighting their culture war, right? They're just not fighting for a Christian culture.
yeah. No, that's so far gone. It's they've been duped, manipulated, and at this point, I think it's going to be hard for them to get out.
Yeah, I don't think they care anymore. I don't.
No.
The line. I say it occasionally, and I say it in the King James because most of my memorization is from the King James as a kid. But God gave them over to a reprobate mind. Or that line. That happened several times. But in Pharaoh is one of the ones that's most forefront of my mind, where his heart went to stone. It says, depending on how you read it, God turned it that way, or Pharaoh turned it that way, or God allowed it to turn that way. But I mean, I think you're right. I don't know that there's any coming back for most of these people to a place of Christ or centeredness or the gospel. It feels, I believe that God is still a miracle working God, and there's no one who's too far from being reached, but these people keep running further and further away from his hand. So I know God can reach as far as you are, but you got to stop running away from him at some point, right? And I agree. I feel like he's just kind of said, let go and do whatever the hell you want, and their hearts have turned to stone. I don't know that there's ever coming back, a large majority of these people or any, segment of these people. It's depressing and scary.
Especially when you've built your identity around it, right? And you've argued it, you fought for it, even if you realize that, man, this isn't right.
Yeah, there's too much blood, sweat, and tears, right? I mean, it's it's like the classic Confederate problem. All those folks who fought for the Confederacy had, parents, grandparents, great grandparents who fought for the Confederacy. Once you have invested so much into something, you are not really able to see, the problems of the value you spent in doing that. You have to find some redemption in that, and so it keeps you holding on to those ideas. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. There's far too much that has been invested in their hearts and their lives and their thinking, and the harm that they've done, in order to do enough self-reflection to say, maybe this wasn't really the right path. Maybe I've been wrong. Maybe I've hurt a whole lot of people through this, and maybe I've been completely and utterly outside of the kingdom of God in doing it. I think it's why we still, in some ways, have the Confederacy around, because you had too many people who were way too invested in it to ever see that there was something wrong with it.
Yeah, I think that's it. You hit it on the head. I think that's where we're at. And so,
what is that sunk cost? Which I think is a fallacy, but there's once you've sunk a lot of cost into something, you're gonna love it. It's it's like buying that idiot lemon car that you knew you shouldn't have bought because you read the reviews, but you got too much money in it to admit, that it's problematic. You married that person, or what are you, we all have these things in life, right, where it's like we have far too much invested in it for us to admit that the emperor has no clothes. And this is, I think you're right, where we are in Christianity. And when you think of how much cost and effort has been sunk into decades and decades of this Christian nationalism that we're all living in the middle of, Um, I agree. I mean, maybe if Fox News would burn to the ground and nothing would replace it, maybe there would be some relief to that brainwash. But how do you fix brainwashing?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think the only thing that would happen is they would say, well, Trump just didn't do it right. We'll find somebody that'll do it correctly, right?
Yeah. Well,
You know, they're
maybe.
not gonna they're not gonna give up on their ideals.
No.
I think they're too far gone, as you've pointed out. Why? And so yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but it's sad to watch. This last month has been really depressing for me. It's like, oh man, just one thing after another. And where you got, the other thing is you got, the Gestapo walking the streets telling kids sitting on their porches they can't, be outside having a soda or a smoke or, what have you. And I
Yeah,
saw
we
that and I
live in
was
an
like, whoa,
authoritarian nation now.
yeah.
We live in an authoritarian country. Will we come out of that? I don't know, but currently we are. And
And of course,
if you're not feeling it, it's because you're a white middle class upper class individual. If you're not feeling
yeah, I was
that
just
we
going to
live in an
say, because
authoritarian nation.
they weren't walking through my neighborhood, telling me not to smoke my cigar on my porch. They were walking through the projects and telling black kids, not to get back in the house. That Trump doesn't want them hanging out outside. Like what? Like
Yeah, and
so
the church, frankly, is to blame for this for decades of God and country, rah rah. Let's celebrate, police force officers and these things. Not that every cop is, but the church has for a very long time celebrated and desired this strong authoritarianism within their own communities, and now that it truly is here in a bad way, we have ourselves to blame for this.
yeah, we do. We love it. We love violence. American Christianity clearly loves violence. I think that's why it's obsessed with penal substitutionary atonement theory. It's we love that God is violent towards himself, and
Yeah, this is a great point, actually, Matt. I had not thought of this. That so much of what we're seeing right now within Christianity and Christian nationalism is violence, because we think of violence as like horror movies, blood, but oftentimes violence is much broader than that. The treatment of other human beings, bulldozing, homeless people's, that's violence. The things that we say about other people, the way that we speak about other people who aren't, that's violence by definition. H-1B visas, the way we treat green card holders and people who are in the court system trying to and deporting people who are in process doing it the right way. Whenever we say just do it, it's violence. And so I think that's a great point, is that there is an addiction maybe within humanity, but especially within the church right now, to violence, and being violent and applauding and enjoying when other people are on the receiving end of violence. It sure certainly explains Trump.
yeah,
Who started what? Why did he grow so quickly and get so much? Because his words were violent,
yeah,
and he was saying things in a way that was more violent than anybody else was ever saying them, and it created this huge attraction to him, because he was mirroring that violence that I think we felt inside, that anger. It's a great point. Hadn't thought
yeah.
of it, man. Hadn't thought of it. Man,
Yeah.
you ought to get your doctorate or something. You're smart.
Maybe we should get one together.
Yeah, maybe we should. That's a good idea. I'd love to do that with you, man. Get to know you a little better.
Yeah. The the violence thing, I think, is very at people's hearts. It's in their core. It's how they read scripture. They're going to read scripture violently. Jesus turning over tables becomes an excuse for them to, pick up guns and be violent. I mean, they're going to put, give Jesus guns, right? Like those images that are out there, Jesus with machine guns. It's prevalent, and I think it goes to their view of the gospel of the PSA of God being violent
Yeah.
towards himself and towards his son, and how that's necessary. So they see it obviously as a theological justice to, all right, it is there are necessary evils in the world. So why not Christians, take up the sword and enact those. And yeah, so they elect a president who does all the things they dream of when they're laid in bed at night. And
Actually, probably true.
yeah. Yeah, and it's sad. It's really sad, and to me, it's definitely antichrist, because obviously Jesus wasn't that way. He told Peter to put away his sword. He laid down his own life. He called us to be, people who loved. He invited others in. Right. He was diverse.
Right.
He was the first person with a DEI policy. Right. And he did all of that, and the church has broadly ignored it. And so we become, America's isolated itself from the world. We become isolationists, which is also antichrist.
And
I mean, Jesus,
yeah, and
didn't isolate himself from anybody.
So counterproductive,
Yeah. So I don't think, when kind of conclude this thought a little bit, I don't think that when evangelical MAGA Christians pray on earth as it is in heaven, they're praying to Jesus and his kingdom, because they're talking about something completely different.
100%. Yeah.
And what has come up over the last month, and I think this is kind of like relevant for, I think anytime you're going through a difficult time or a stressful time, one of the things that I think helps break it up or get you through it, easy anxiety, is just humor. I think that's why we watch comedy movies, go to comedians. Humor has the ability to take the seriousness or the edge off the seriousness of something. It might still be serious, but it helps take the edge off. And our boy Gavin Newsome has provided some humor, and it might be a way to address power in a way. And I think in some ways it has worked, at least from a online standpoint. People are noticing it's kind of a subversive way in, to address issues through humor, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I feel like, Newsome and his, social media, who knows whether Newsome approves of it, who knows whose idea it was, but who cares? It feels almost like they stumbled ass backwards into.
Yeah. It was probably just a frustrating moment.
But it was like, why has nobody thought of this, before? And maybe they have, and nobody with any clout, was doing it. But I don't know if you've been seeing it, but it's hard not to see, because even Fox News is talking about it. That Gavin Newsome is essentially sarcastically parodying Trump's style and some of the White House social media feed style. So, he'll put out tweets that are capitalized just like Trump, use the same words as Trump, use the same closing sentences, as Trump does, and memes, that are mocking, that look like Trump memes but are mocking, and it's just been brilliant, and a little uncomfortable sometimes, because it's so on point with the humor. And I think all good comedy makes us feel uncomfortable. So like, I think all good art makes us feel uncomfortable a little bit because it's hitting something within us, that we're not used to having, kind of light shown on or a finger put on it. Art is good in that way, and comedy is art, in a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of what's going on here is it's causing discomfort, which means that it's hitting the mark somewhere.
Yeah. It's been gold, and it's funny to watch. This is another reason why I feel like a lot of MAGA is so far gone is they can't even see what he's doing. Like they don't
Yeah,
recognize
what is
it
it they
in
said on Fox
themselves.
News? This week was somebody who's going to do this kind of thing, in political office, like a governor or something, has no business being in high level politics. Like,
Yeah, like what?
seriously mocking Trump. Like this is what Trump
Yeah,
does, only Trump does it
yeah,
worse. So I don't know. Is it like, that you don't see the irony in what you just said, or that you won't see the irony in what you just said? And I wonder if it's that they won't see the irony in what they just said because their viewers are so brainwashed and so brain dead that they will drink any Kool-Aid, they'll drink any line, any talking
yeah.
point, that helps them to continue to live in this mirage of a kingdom that's false. But you're right. It's insane how many people just don't understand what he's doing and how powerful it is to step back and laugh at the idiocy uh, of what's going on in our
Yeah,
nation.
or the brainwashing, right? Like just the lies that I mean, you might be right. Maybe Fox News knows exactly what Newsom is doing and just are, playing into
We got to try
Trump.
to find a way to diffuse it,
Yeah, lying. Like
just to
even the
make the
whole
lips look bad on the libs.
yeah. But even the whole gerrymandering thing, where Trump is clearly asking Texas to gerrymander so he can get more votes at the midterms, and then Newsom responds by saying, "Well, I'm going to do the same thing, and I have more votes that I can get than Texas, so screw you." And then Trump and JD Vance are acting like Newsom's the only one doing it, like Texas isn't doing this, and I'm just like, holy cow, and people just believe him. Like,
Even Texas
look,
this week, the governor of Texas,
yeah,
was like, I can't believe that California is doing this. This is so wrong that they're doing this while doing it himself.
I know.
I'm like, what world are we living? But this
Yeah,
is where we are. No, we don't want to live in reality anymore. It's tell me what I want to hear. I'll say whatever I have to say. It's so bold now. You don't even have to hide it.
no.
There's no requirement from people to do that because there's no logic or ration or reason anymore that seems to be present in our politics or sadly in our theology because the syncretism of the two.
Well, that, and I think people are just dumb. I mean, I hate to say it that bluntly, but people don't think critically. They just watch some clip on their algorithm that goes by in 10 seconds, and that's what they believe, right? So Fox News has these clips, JD Vance has these clips, and that's what they believe. Oh, we're not doing it because look, Vance says they're just the only ones doing it, and
Yeah, and it works. It works.
it works.
I have several family members who were. I wouldn't say that they were Democrats, but they voted as much for Democrat presidents over the years as they did for Republican presidents over the years. They were progressive thinkers, especially when it came to, um, soft issues, social justice issues. Very much, you know, racism and advocacy, for under resourced groups and things like that. And Fox News has absolutely decimated them. To the point of can't even have a conversation with them without it being a talking. But Joe Biden is the worst president this nation has ever had. Even just absolutely idiotic things like that. Like, you're 60, 70, 80 years old. Like, you've seen some bad presidents just in your lifetime without even going back to the ones before yours. what is going on? Like you've been
Yeah.
completely and utterly brainwashed, but want to pretend that you've not been, that you're still where you're not. Because you're right. You for whatever reason, you stop thinking critically, and if you weren't dumb to
Well,
begin with, you become dumb.
yeah, one of the things that MAGA made fun of Biden for a lot, which was kind of funny, was his stumbling around and not being able to, because he's getting old and obviously his mind and body weren't connected like they were. And we all know as we get older, our mind and body are less and less connected.
Hey, I'm
It's,
47 and I feel as bad as Biden on some days. So
yeah.
yeah, it's only getting
But
worse.
I had to point out to some family members recently, they had never seen that Trump does the same shit because he's old, right, and decrepit, and they were like, I was informing them, like they're like, wow, I didn't realize that. That's
Didn't say that on
hilarious,
Fox
right?
News, did you? Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we hide these things, and only Biden, grows old and acts like that,
Yeah.
like
Well, and part,
so.
let's blame not just Fox News and or CNN. Let's blame all of journalism. Almost all of journalism has now cowered in fear.
They're scared, yeah, they're scared.
To the regime. They're afraid they're going to lose access or get sued. As several news organizations have gotten sued for ridiculous stuff. So we can't. We really don't have freedom of the press anymore, or they're not using their freedom anymore. Uh, how are you going to fight? Pulpits as well. Have essentially given up and aligned with the regime. So you're not going to hear truth unless you actively try to find reality. You're not going to find it in your news feeds, probably. You're not going to find it in your pulpits or in the conversations that you're having with your friends. And it's discouraging.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah,
humor, I
the other.
think humor has been a great humor. And I've said this, humor may be, I think, the only hope now that we have for combating and managing a worst case scenario, which I think is worst case scenario may be inevitable in the toppling of democracy. And humor may be the only thing that we have left, because it definitely disarms Trump. He doesn't know how to deal with it, doesn't know how to respond to it. He's not a funny guy, and it clearly gets under his skin. There are a lot of folks, Thomas Harris and a few other people who have said, I don't think that this is the right way. We need to go high when folks go low. And I understand that. I don't know that ridicule, though South Park was pretty funny. Ridicule, I think, works and has a place, but I don't think, for a lot of people, that's probably going to be what opens their minds to what's going on. But I do think that, what Newsom has done has generated conversation, has made people step back and say, okay, Trump maybe kind of does look like an idiot, because Newsom looks like an idiot doing this, but he's just doing what Trump does. And I think, that's going to force Trump and the White House to pivot the way that they market the stuff that they do, which is a good thing, to be on the defense rather than on the offense.
Yeah, I think I see some of that sentiment. When they go high or low, we go high. Whatever, Michelle Obama said. You're not going low because you highlight the idiocy, or the evilness of those in power, right? And I think that's the brilliance of Newsom, is he's not really like, being derogatory. He's not calling somebody fat. He's not picking out Trump's, orange hair or anything like that. He is just calling out the evil in a very clever and humorous way. And I think it's brilliant. And like you said, it's stirring up lots of conversation. Trump, it got so much under his skin. Trump sent ICE to his press conference, Newsom's press conference last week, like clearly got under the guy's skin. Like, and Trump hasn't publicly responded to any of this, but he sends his Gestapo to, try to intimidate. And honestly, that actually just plays right into Newsom's hands. Like, Trump is a complete idiot, because if I'm Newsom and I see that, I'm just smiling. Like, this is awesome. Like, I am under the guy's skin. Like, you're showing that this is working. And so
Yeah,
Newsom's just going to keep doing it, right?
being a sociopathic narcissist, which Trump is by definition. Yeah, being the punchline is not at all comfortable to that type of person. I think you even pointed this out to me a day or two ago, how Trump has changed the way he writes right now on social
Yeah,
media.
yes, yeah.
Who knows how long that'll last, but you see that it has an effect. That he's on the defense, and that's where that's where we need to be. And it may be the first time that we've ever been in that place with Trump, where Trump is in a way on retreat rather than on advance. And that's a key thing to learn from. Comedy bypasses folks' barriers, and so in the way that Fox News and pulpits and things have brainwashed folks, comedy is all about getting on the inside to a place that you didn't know somebody could get to, and helping you see the ridiculousness of a situation or laugh. You watch comedy, it's all about that. It's all about the setup, and then the left turn, the bait and switch. It starts serious, and then everything changes and it becomes a joke, and you laugh because you were not expecting that turn of events. You probably can't name on one hand the number of conservative comedians out there. There may be some conservative comedians who pretend to be conservative. Colbert, right? That was his shtick for a long time, pretending to be conservative. But there aren't a lot of conservative comedians out there because comedy kind of relies on this progressive thinking, not necessarily politically, but it relies on this idea that things, how they are not maybe the way things should be, or the way things really are underneath. And so comedy kind of relies on this, things aren't concrete, in order to create the humor. And I just think it's a brilliant way to expose and to get people thinking on topics that they would not normally think any other way about than that. That's what comedy does. It gets you to think about a situation or scenario in a way that you would not have otherwise thought about it unless somebody caused you to laugh. I think Newsom is brilliant, and we need to learn from that if there's going to be any diffusing of this seemingly inevitable authoritarian crumbling of democracy. Not that I'm speaking to, over the top or sensationalized, but people said, Project 25, you're being sensational. How much of it is done now? 60%, 70% of it has actually been done.
Yeah. And it's awful. It's everything that even conservatives would say a democracy should never do, like nationalizing the National Guard, federal, whatever it is, taking over the National Guard, invading our American cities, all of those things. If it's just, they don't care. And so, right. Yeah, I think comedy's great. And I think Colbert, one of the reasons why he's getting canceled is because Trump couldn't stand his comedy. And so he, put the pressure on CBS to get rid of him. And so it obviously works. And I want to hopefully more, and Newsom's a perfect guy because Newsom is an elected official. There's really nothing Trump can do. He can, play these little saber rattling games with him, but he can't cancel him.
Yeah, well, and the more he goes after Newsom, the higher Newsom's star rises. It kind of has the same problem, that we see with Trump, with Joel Webben, with all these other Christian nationalists. The more attention you give to it, the bigger it grows. And Trump he should be avoiding Newsom completely and ignoring it, but I don't know that he can long term.
No. But yeah, so good to be back in the saddle. And,
yeah, man.
It's fun, and hopefully people listening to this can become less jacked in their theology.
As we continue to try to become less jacked in our theology as well.
Yeah.
The more jacked in life, less jacked in theology, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully, we're moving in the right direction.
All right, you ready to move on and find out?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, here we go. We're at that part of the show, and Matt is not on the screen. Sorry about that. Let's add you back in here, buddy. All right, here we go. The part of the show where Matt and I talk about what's going on the other side of the Jack spectrum, how things are going on in the physical world. How you doing, Matt?
Pretty good. Just drinking some lean body.
Ooh, lean
To
body.
get jacked.
Look at you.
Yeah, I mean, I was on vacation for like a little over 2 weeks. So
am I going to start getting a lot of excuses here? Is this what you're prepping me for, laying the groundwork?
No, I enjoyed vacation. I did what I could to mitigate things, but obviously I didn't say no because I'm on vacation. So, I got up in the morning at the hotel and ate waffles on the waffle maker.
Oh, those are the best. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. If we, kids wanted ice cream, we got ice cream, that kind of stuff. So, had a couple beers each night with my brother. So I get back and I feel terrible, right? Like going to the gym, and I just know I need to get back into the routine. And I did. I just laughed. I made jokes in my mind about how awful this is, but I'm back. So I mean, yeah. So I was back on the wagon last week and continue this week, and felt we had weekend parties all weekend, but I was able to mitigate disaster and not completely lose what I had gained during the week. So, or lost, I guess, if you will, during the week. So, overall feeling good. As the look at the year, I was on my peak, I was down 45 pounds.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I'm still net. Well, I don't know what I am as of today, but I'm still at least net down 30 pounds. So, I did get all the data. And I was actually happy with that. So it wasn't as bad as I thought. And so, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like I'm back into the routine and on the grind. So, yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Life happens. You gotta, what is it Lynn Sweet said? Everything in moderation, even moderation. Sometimes, even if you're on a journey to try to, lose weight or build muscle or whatever it is, those moments come so few and far between. Oftentimes where you can disconnect, be with family, be off. You gotta.
Yeah.
A healthy lifestyle is about life, right? It's about being able to live life. So
enjoy your life. Yeah.
Exactly. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die.
Yeah.
Hopefully not tomorrow, but I hope that's more metaphorical than.
Hopefully many tomorrows.
But... Yes. Tomorrow in the grand sense of the word tomorrow, not in the literal sense of the word tomorrow.
How are you?
Things are going well. Yeah, things are going well. Heart is good. I've been completely released. I have no restrictions anymore on anything, so that's good. Back in the gym, which getting back into the gym, I was looking forward to it, but now being back in, it's just so hard some days to show up and get there. Having been out of the rhythm for so long, I have to kind of force myself into that and to be dedicated. And part of it is, it's not like I'm getting better from where I was. I'm just trying to get back to where I was. And there's, sometimes this feeling of, just ugh. But some of my lifts, especially the lower ones, are back to where I was. Bicep curls, stuff like that. Everything. I'm back to where I was. The bigger lifts, deadlift, squat, bench, still have a ways to go to be back to kind of where my normal, regular daily max was. But I'm getting closer and closer. Every week or so, I'm up 5 or 10 pounds or so on those lifts.
Awesome.
So it's headed in the right direction, which is good. And the weight is slowly coming down. Fortunately, I didn't put on a ton. Maybe 15 pounds or so, 10 to 15 over the 3 months I was out after surgery. But that is coming back down. So, I'm feeling pretty good about where things are in a good rhythm. The nutrition for me is the hardest. So, measuring out the oatmeal, making sure, they're eating fish and asparagus, sure dinner, chicken and rice, and trying not to snack too much, in between. Though occasionally I do. Like I went to McDonald's this week and got one of those nostalgic McDonald Land adult Happy Meals that have the milkshake, and it was glorious.
Nice.
It was amazing. Would encourage everybody to go do it once rather than regularly. But it was awesome. Like you said, you got to live every once in a while, right? But I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
That's good. Good to hear that. So no restrictions. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Glad to finally be here. So, whatever life I have left, whether it's tomorrow or multiple tomorrows, at least I can finally enjoy it without any restrictions.
And well, I assume you got like medicine you got to take and protocol. That's
oh my gosh, yeah, I've got like 13, 14 pills a day.
wow.
I have to take. Yeah. Oh yeah. The regimen of medicine long term is amazing. But the good news is a lot of that medicine very literally keeps me alive. The stuff that we have learned just in the last few years, several of the medicines that I'm on have only been on the market a few years, and it's just radical what it does and allows the heart to do whenever it's in a deficient state. But it's crazy. It's insane.
It's amazing the technology we have on
it is. So it's a really good thing, that we cut funding, to all of that research and sent all of those, doctoral students, from other countries packing to other universities around the world so that the U.S. would not have any of that advanced research like we've been on the forefront of, so we essentially blew ourselves back up into the dark ages because, hey.
Make America great again. Right.
Make America great again, because that's definitely going to put more money in the pockets of the blue collar workers in the Midwest. They're definitely going to see that money returned to them that we're not spending in research.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
100%.
no, it's not going to happen. Y'all are idiots. That's all I got to say about that. But I might be personally invested in research, for cardiac disease.
Survival.
So forgive me for being a little blunt there. All right, man. It was good to talk to you today.
All right, good to see you.
See you next time. Take care.
All right, bye.